Hello and good morning. Welcome to today's 250 real ear measurement. We're winding on down to the close of this course this semester. And today what we're going to do is just summarize what we did last week, and then we will proceed to show you further examples as to how real ear results differ from what manufacturer software often is predicting. So manufacturer software gets you into the ballpark, as we said. You're binking in an audiogram, enter the client's data, pick a hearing aid, do the fitting, and it looks really good. And then when you verify with real ear, are you really getting what the software said you would get? We also last week ended with putting together real ear along with fitting methods. So let's kind of take last week's PowerPoint. I'm going to show you some pictures from last week's PowerPoint, and then we can launch on off into what we're talking about today, all right? I'm going to share screen here, and I'm going to try and get that PowerPoint. Here we go. And when you take a look at this here screen, you will see what we talked about and what today's talk is. Software talks, real ear measurement walks, manufacturer software prediction versus reality. I'll make it a little bit larger here. Well, not too big. We'll just leave it. Okay, so here's the manufacturer software predictions. They're showing you outputs for loud inputs, outputs for average inputs, outputs for soft inputs. And it looks like the targets are the thicker lines, and then the hearing aid response that the manufacturer is predicting are the lighter lines, and they look like a pretty good match. Well, look at the middle one only. Let's take that middle one. When you're verifying that with real ear, here's the guy's hearing loss. Here's the loudness discomfort levels across. Here may be the targets, the plus signs, and you can guesstimate what fitting method that would be for. It's likely DSL4 because, and how do we know? Because its targets are halfway right away inside the dynamic range of the listener. And we know that actual real ear targets should be about a third above the thresholds for average inputs, right? Nonetheless, the manufacturer's prediction is really quite rosy, whereas the fitting looks okay here. Well, that's because there's no hearing loss here. And then when you're look at how far shy of targets you are, and yet they're saying that you're pretty close to targets. So there's a huge difference. And then last week we compared fitting methods on real ear, today's real ear. Okay, and we said, hey man, okay, here's a sloping loss, all right, and let's compare DSL5 to NAL1, and let's just compare these fitting methods. Don't worry, we'll come back to the real ear versus manufacturer fitting methods thing. We'll come back to that. I'm just summarizing what we finished with last week here, and then we said, okay, here for a DSL5 for a kid. Here's the guys, here's the hearing loss. Here would be the targets. See how they're about a third above the thresholds? All right. And don't worry about this big green banana here. That's just LTAS, long-term average speech spectrum. Okay. And you can see that this is real ear is a good counseling tool because it reveals that unaided, this person only hears the vowels and cannot hear the high frequencies because those are literally below his thresholds. Anyway, let's compare the targets. So this would be DSL for a child. This would be and this would be NAL1. DSL, NAL1. DSL, NAL1. Pretty similar, aren't they? DSL9, okay, and here's NAL2. Here's NAL2. NAL1, NAL2. NAL1, same hearing loss, NAL2. 1, 2. See how NAL1 has that bump in the middle? And NAL2 asks for a little bit more on the sides? That's really how NAL1 differs from NAL2, isn't it? And that's what we talked about last week. Now we'll compare NAL2 to DSL5. And the green is for Average inputs, 65 dB SPL. The pink or purple is for 55 dB SPL inputs. Targets, okay? Again, don't worry about the pink stuff here. Just focus on the targets. So this would be DSL5 for an adult, DSL5, NAL2, 5, 2, 5, 2. Not so different, are they? I think we concluded last week by saying that fitting methods are actually like islands in the setting sun. Because if Liebarger, the founding father of the half-gain rule, he, recall, had functional gain only. And using functional gain, he would try to increase the thresholds of the person. First testing under headphones, unaided thresholds. Take off the headphones. Put the hearing aid in the ear. Sit a meter in front of a speaker. Raise your hand when you hear the warble tones. And he sought to increase the thresholds by half with the belief then, the faith, the belief that if he aided by half the gain, the outputs, aided speech outputs, would sit nicely in the residual dynamic range of the client. That is, halfway between the thresholds on the audiogram and loudness discomfort levels at the bottom of the audiogram. Remember that? So, but he couldn't, he was blinded. He didn't have real ear. So he couldn't see the results of his endeavors. Now we can see the results. And in a way, we said last week, bottom line basically is aid so that average aided speech is about a quarter to a third above the thresholds. And we said make sure Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is 5, 1, 2, and 4,000 hertz, okay? Make sure that those 4 frequencies are about a third above the thresholds. Look at here, it's even, and then look at, it's even less with NAL2 here. It's probably like a quarter in some places, and then some places even below. I mean, but that's NAL2, you know. DSL is a little bit more, okay? But basically, if you follow the rules of aiding so that your outputs for average inputs are a third above the thresholds, and then aid so that soft inputs sit right around at the thresholds, you know, really close to the thresholds, and then so that louder inputs like 80 never exceed loudness discomfort levels, you're done. All right, so basically, now, I'm going to take some slides. This picture you don't have in your PowerPoints, okay? This comes from an article, and I'm going to show you the article it comes from, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. I'm showing you your notes as well, but you don't have this, okay? I just developed this more recently as I wrote the latest edition of my book, Compression for Clinicians. You have what's right here. All this stuff and on down. For today's notes, I believe it's Unit 6, okay? Real ear walks, or manufacturer fitting software talks, real ear measures walk, okay? That's the topic today, and you have from here on down. But I added something at the very beginning. And that's what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to just challenge you or ask you to check this out on the internet. Look up this article. Look this up and write this down or look at this very closely. It's an article written by Sanders, Studi, Weber, and Mueller in 2015. Manufacturers NAL2 fittings fail real ear verification. Hearing review, 21.3, page 24. This is all available on internet. Just check it out. Google up this article. Save it on your desktop or save it somewhere as a PDF. I think it's a PDF file. Save it and then keep it. Read it, because it's a really good article. And I'm going to read to you exactly an excerpt from my book, Compression for Clinicians, 3rd edition. You don't have this one yet. You've got the 2nd, so it's not in there, okay? But I'm going to just read this to you and check this out. Another thing to note is that fitting software from different hearing aid manufacturers implements common fitting methods like NAL2 and DSL5 in different ways. Now read that again. Fitting software from the various manufacturers implements common fitting methods in different ways. So NAL2, you'd think, is NAL2. Manufacturer software buys the rights to use NAL2, and then they wrinkle it a little bit in different ways. This is really wild. It's like, are you kidding me? All right. Sanders, Studi, Weber, and Mueller in 2015 looked at how various manufacturers implement the NAL2 method. Believe it or not, they do not implement it all exactly in the same way. The investigators noted 4 things. 1, less amplification for soft inputs overall. Okay, so and this is what the manufacturers do. They give you less amplification for the soft inputs. They give you reduced amplification for high frequencies above 2000 hertz than NAL2 would have said. They give more amplification for the mid frequencies, especially for louder inputs, and they tend to give more linear gain than is prescribed by NAL2. So let's paint the scene here. Say you have a client with some particular hearing loss. You then fit this client according to NAL2 that is available on the different software from each of various manufacturers. On each software fitting, you would likely see resultant outputs that would come nice and close to matching NAL2 targets. So read that again. Let's paint the scene here. Say you have a client with some particular hearing loss. You then fit this client according to NAL2. And you've done this on Starkey, then you did it on Oticon, then you did it on Unitron, then you did it on Bernafon, all these ons. What's with all these ons? Anyway, all right. On each software fitting, you would likely see resultant outputs that would look nice and pretty. They would look like they're hitting the targets, no problem. Upon verification with real ear measurement, however, you would end up with very different, significantly different outputs from each of the manufacturers. This is why we cannot blindly trust manufacturers' first fit approximations. This is why we cannot blindly accept those. This is why we must verify predicted fittings with REM. The picture is further complicated by the fact that manufacturers provide their own proprietary fitting methods. Compared to the published fitting methods like DSL5 and NAL2, these methods tend to roll off high frequencies. This is likely done to reduce initial client discomfort and hearing aid fitting feedback and so on. Sanders found that for very soft outputs, I'll raise this up a little bit, that for very soft inputs, the proprietary fitting methods ask for a lot less output, especially for the highs. For average inputs of 65, proprietary fitting methods and NAL2 are quite similar, but the proprietary fitting methods still asked for less output for the highs. For loud inputs, proprietary fitting methods provided more output. Weird. For louder inputs, the proprietary fitting methods provided more output, especially for the mids. In general, proprietary fitting methods tend to most closely approximate the output required for inexperienced and new hearing aid wearers. Now, you don't have to memorize this, okay? Don't think that I'm going to ask this on a quiz or on a test. The whole point is just to highlight the fact below. Apparently, only real ear measurement systems can be relied upon to truly stick to the fitting methods as they were originally designed. In our hearing healthcare field, REM is definitely considered as a clinical best practice. Abrams, 212. Abrams, Chisholm, McManus, and McArdle, 212. Palmer, 2009. Regarding manufacturers, well, we really shouldn't point fingers of blame at them. Blame can be put anywhere, but really the onus is on us to verify with REM. That's the important message to take home. Let's look at some pictures here. This is from the Studi and Sanders article. These are pictures stolen directly from their article, okay? So here goes. Manufacturers' proprietary fittings for a 55 dB SPL input. Now, this is a target for NAL2. For some fictitious, sloping loss. This would be the output targets, okay? So basically, and then you've got, so NAL2, again, the red would be the target for some hearing loss, like some mild to moderate hearing loss. And then you've got manufacturer 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 different manufacturers, proprietary fitting method targets. So for the same hearing loss, look at what the proprietary fitting methods are doing. Rolling off the highs, like dramatically. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's a real change from NAL2. So that's what I was saying. Proprietary fitting methods often roll off the highs. Let's look at 65. The 65 is better. The 65 is a little bit, but look at how they even ask for more in the mids. Weird. It's like they're not thinking about compression as much. That's what I was saying. They, in a weird way, they're almost more linear. They're providing similar gain and output for soft and then for medium, whereas compression, WDRC, does the opposite. So that's what the article means when it was saying that in a weird way, the manufacturers are almost acting in a more linear fashion because they're providing similar gain and output for soft and medium, whereas the NAL2 is looking at compression and it's backing off as the inputs get louder. So again, soft inputs really rolling off the highs, less for proprietary and really a lot less for the highs. Average inputs still less for the highs, but more for the mids. And then loud inputs, look at this. Whoa! So in a weird, that's what I mean by linear. In a way, the proprietary fitting methods are acting kind of old-fashioned like. So it's interesting to note. Very interesting. Now, here's REM differences, real ear differences between real ear output of manufacturers' NAL2 algorithms. Okay, so here's how manufacturers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're taking NAL2, okay, they're implementing it themselves, and then, so then you can see, you'll look at what their targets are, and then you'll look at AudioScan, which is a real ear measurement system, okay, it shows up at MHS conferences, they'll have a booth there every year. It may be made in Canada, but it's sold all over the world. Anyway, you guys have a different system in your lab. No matter, it would probably, the same differences would be shown on your systems. So the point is, what we're showing here is frequency, and then the deviation from target, from the true target. Okay, so this is the variation. These numbers in decibels here give the variation, the degree of difference between what the manufacturers, how the manufacturers are implementing NAL2 versus how NAL2 appears on a real ear system. So this is, I want you to get the picture here, okay? So you're looking at 5 different hearing aid manufacturers, what's the difference between each of their implementations of NAL2 compared to how NAL2 is seen on a real ear system? So you've programmed the hearing aid for that same hearing loss, okay, for the hearing loss that's shown here. The red is the NAL2 target. The red is the NAL2 target. The red is the NAL2 target for soft, 55, 65, 75 out inputs, okay? Now, how much, this is the proprietary fittings, of course, compared to these, to NAL2, but now we're on a different topic. We're jumping to a different topic here. And the topic is, okay, now let's pick NAL2 on the manufacturer software. And let's fit a hearing loss with Starkey's NAL2, with Oticon's NAL2, with Unitron's NAL2, Bernathon's NAL, all the different So let's fit the same hearing loss with the same NAL2 method. And let's look at the differences in their predicted outputs and in how what they say is going to happen versus what a real ear system implementation of NAL2 suggests. And looky, here's for 55 dB inputs, 55, okay? Quite a bit of difference, a lot less. Again, the manufacturers back off. They tend to not provide as much. Interesting, look at this at 3K. All of them have this weird boop, boop. It's weird. Only this manufacturer, 3, they were pretty close until they dropped off right here. But they were the best of them. Then you look at 65 dB SPL input. Same thing, we're looking at the differences. Now the differences become a little bit less, but still you're getting quite a drop here and quite a drop here. Once again, hearing aid company number 3 is doing pretty well. Not bad, can't complain. And now, look at how they differ for louder inputs. Okay, lots of difference here for loud input. So now the manufacturers are asking for more. See, look at the 0. 0 would mean no difference. 0 would mean no difference. Okay? If all the manufacturers' lines laid right down on top of 0, it would mean the manufacturers were implementing NAL2 exactly the way it was meant to be implemented. So the only ones that are really telling the truth is the real ear measurement systems. So if manufacturers were truly adhering to NAL2 as it was meant or intended, all 5 of these lines would lay straight across 0. Okay, let's go back to 55. You can see that for 55 dB SPL inputs, manufacturers, all 5 of them here, now the red is no longer NAL2. The red, okay, it's just given to one of the manufacturers. All 5 hearing aid manufacturers are generally doing less. Their targets are less. Even though they're using NAL2, their targets are less. Everything is falling below 0 here. Okay? That's really what that's really the truth of the matter here. So don't think of the red as being NAL2. That was my earlier mistake. I was saying, oh, look at this one's being pretty good. It's sticking pretty close. That's BS. That was Ted not reading the graph right. So I'm telling the story straight now. NAL2 is not on this picture. This picture is showing you how much the 5 hearing aid companies deviated from NAL2. And you can see that these 2, the red and green, they didn't deviate much. They stuck to NAL2. They behaved themselves. But the black and the purple and the blue, those 3 manufacturers, okay, those 3 guys really did gave less output. And then as you got to the high frequencies, most of them deviated, whereas the red one stuck pretty close to NAL2. It didn't deviate by much. Okay? Now let's look at 65. At 65, they behaved themselves a little better. Most all the 5 of them are clustered a little closer to no difference, no deviation from target. And then in the high frequencies, they're all backing off. They're all providing less, except Mr. Red. He's pretty good. He's sticking pretty close to target. Now, for 75 dB SPL inputs, most of the hearing aid manufacturers are deviating once again from true NAL2 targets. But what are they doing here in this case? They're asking for more. Now you're into the plus. And see, that again is another indication of how the manufacturers are actually applying the fitting method in a more linear way. Because what does linear mean? Same gain for soft, medium, and loud inputs, right? That's what linear gain means. Linear means I'm given, let's say if the hearing aid's giving 50 dB of gain, it's giving 50 dB of gain to a whisper, 50 dB of gain to average speech, and 50 dB of gain to loud speech. And we all know that compression does not do that. Compression, especially WDRC, gives buku gain for soft inputs, less gain for average inputs, and less gain still for loud inputs. So the manufacturers seem to be acting in a more linear fashion because they're not backing off in the amount of gain that they're giving as the inputs increase. And that's why for louder inputs, they're actually asking for more output than NAL2 did. And yet they're implementing NAL, but they're bastardizing it, or they're putting some tincture into the mixture. I don't know what they're doing, but nonetheless that's what this study has shown. And so to take it all home, basically what it means is NAL2 isn't truly NAL2 among all the manufacturers. They implement it slightly differently. It's weird. So back to the topic now. Software talks, real ear measurement walks. Let's just look at some case studies here. These are results from a few years ago that I had students do a project in this class, in the real ear class, and it was at Conestoga College in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. That's an HIS program that I had started there. None of these hearing aids even exist anymore. Okay, that's how fast things change, but the story hasn't changed. I had students do a project and compare how these various hearing aids with different manufacturers, how the software prediction differed from what real ear actually showed. So let's take a picture of that. Let's look. Student number 1, and she compared NAL-R, old fitting method, linear fitting method, remember from our early days, okay, doesn't matter, on an RM500, that's an audio scan real ear system. And she said, and the stimulus was a sweep tone, meaning it went brrr, brrr, brrr. And let's see what the input level was. The input level was 65, right here. Okay, and it's aided 1 and aided 2. What does that mean? Aided 1, what the manufacturer software gave or did versus what real ear actually showed. What I mean is the manufacturer used NAL-R. You can choose NAL-R on the manufacturer. It's hard to do today anymore because most manufacturers have thrown away all those linear fitting methods. But in about 5 years ago, they still had them. So the student binked in a hearing loss, some mild to moderate loss, chose NAL as the fitting method, and used one of these hearing aids, just chose one of these hearing aids. I can't remember which one, but it doesn't matter. Maybe it was Bernafon, could have been Resound, could have been Oticon, could have been whatever, doesn't matter. Chose one. on the software, entered the hearing loss into NOAA, chose the manufacturer, picked the fitting method, and then hit enter. And the manufacturer's software. Okay, there's the target. And the hearing aid is now programmed to meet now our targets. Looks good on the screen. The hearing aid gain looked just like the target gain for now R. Now remember, we're talking gain here. It's old fitting method, now R. Remember, they didn't use output then. So let's look at this. Here's the target, the light line, right here, that dotted line. All right, and here would be the client's real ear unaided response, REUR. Here's real ear aided response according to the manufacturer. And it's like, and again, I got to draw the picture here. On the manufacturer software, it looked like the gain that the hearing aid was delivering was matching the target gain of now R. Get it? So on the software, it looked perfect. It looked like the hearing aid response was matching target right on. Okay, looks good on the software. Let's see what it did on real ear. So now, tube in the ear, probe tube in the ear, and hearing aid in, sit the person 18 inches in front of the speaker, do the real ear, and here's what your aided output was, or your aided gain is, REAR, and looky, REAR, the pink, minus REUR, the blue, gives you real ear insertion gain. And look at how short that is from target. We had to increase what the hearing aid was doing so that you got this yellow REAR. And then, and only then, was REAR minus REUR, the blue, gave you an REIG that was at target. Do you see? The manufacturer software tended to deliver less. Let's look at here. Another one. Now we're getting, this is speech mapping. So now we're using today's real ear. DSL SPLogram on RM500. So now you're looking at normal hearing on the bottom, minimal audible pressure. You're looking at loudness discomfort levels, the asterisks. You're looking at the client's thresholds. This is the way we do real ear today. It's an old system, old real ear system. Thank God we don't have ugly systems like this, but the same. This is today's real ear. And the stimulus coming in. Here's the targets. So here's the thresholds. Here's loudness discomfort levels. Here's the targets, the plus sign. What fitting method do you think this is? If you said DSL4, you'd be correct again, because the targets are sitting in the middle of the dynamic range. DSL5 doesn't do that, as we know. Anyway, be that as it may, on the software, when the hearing loss was entered into NOAA, the hearing aid manufacturer got chosen. DSL4 got chosen as your fitting method. Hit the button, quick fit. Okay, boom. Yep, looks like the hearing aid response is right on DSL4 targets. Okay, let's prove it. Probe tube in the ear. Hearing aid programmed according to the software in the ear on top of the probe tube. Client seated 18 inches in front of the speaker. Real ear measurement. Here's what you got. You are below target. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, I probably would be fitting the client like this, okay? But my point is, the manufacturer's software said it looked great. And the truth of the matter was, you were nowhere near target. You were way below. Here's another one now. Okay, different student. Now R And DSL4, you can tell this is a couple of years old. It doesn't matter. The point is still the point, okay? Here's the targets, the NAL target on the left. Here's the client's REUR. The light blue is what the manufacturer said. Oh, on our software, yep, the hearing aid gain is going to be matching NALR target gain perfectly. It looked nice on the screen. Take the person, put the probe tube in the ear, hearing aid on top of the probe tube, 18 inches in front of the speaker. Choose NAL2 on the real ear measurement software. Enter the client's audiogram on the real ear equipment. Okay. Choose NAL-R on the real ear equipment. Okay, go for it. What are you getting? And here's what you got. And here's how shy you are of target. Real ear aided response minus real ear unaided response gave you real ear insertion gain. Look at how far you are shy of the high frequency target. We had to reprogram the aid to deliver more mid to high frequencies in order to have a better match to the NAL target. Go on to today's real ear. Okay, speech mapping. So minimal audible pressure or 0 dB HL. Client's audiogram. Maximum power output or UCL, the most you'd ever want. Here's the targets in the center of the dynamic range, so you know it's DSL4. Program the hearing aid on the manufacturer's software according to DSL4. Manufacturer software says, ooh, that's a nice fit, perfect match. Take the client, do real ear, enter the audiogram into the real ear system equipment. Choose DSL4 as your fitting method. Hit it, and you find out you are below target. You have to reprogram the hearing aid to hit target. Same thing here. Another hearing aid. Same thing here. Have a look. Here's the audiogram. Here's the targets, the plus signs going straight across. Here's loudness discomfort levels. Here's what the manufacturer's software said was hitting DSL4 targets. Here's what we had to do in order to make the hearing aid hit DSL4 targets. Same here. Here's the audiogram. DSL4, apparently, according to the software on their screen, it looked really good. This is the real ear screen. Looky, looky. We had to adjust things considerably to hit the target. You see, this number 6 is the pink noise. Second fit is what they had to do to fix things. Okay? This is NAL, NL1 target. So look at number 4. Number 4 would be the targets. Hard for you to see, I know. Maybe I can blink it and bring it closer. Let's try that. So number 4, NAL targets. Here, here, here. See that? Okay, here. You see how you're a third above the thresholds now? So you can tell you're no longer DSL4. Okay? Speech mapping, now NL1. So here's the targets, number 4. I should draw that next year. I'll pencil that in so it's easier to see. Now, you program the hearing aid on the manufacturer's software according to NAL1, entered the audiogram, of course, in NOAA, chose your hearing aid, went to that manufacturer, went to a manufacturer to fit that hearing loss, chose your hearing aid, chose NAL1, hit it, quick fit. Manufacturer software does its magic behind the screen, shows you a nice picture. Yep, you're hitting NAL1 targets just beautifully. Okay, let's prove it. Do real ear, and look at where you are. All right, you had to boost things up considerably to hit target. It's unreal. It's picture after picture after picture. Here's DSL-4 again. Look at where the targets are. See how they're halfway right between the floor and the ceiling? Unlike this one here. This one's harder to see. I really should paint that clearer. But and another one with now R. Again, first fit, readjusted fit. It just doesn't stop. Here, minimal audible pressure, the hearing loss, loudness, discomfort levels, the targets, got to be DSL-4, look where they are. Manufacturer's first approximation to DSL-4 targets, readjustment in order to hit DSL-4 targets. Okay? It's like one after the other. This one gets kind of confusing. Don't worry about these these vertical lines. That was, I'll tell you what that was for. In the early days on this real ear equipment, they didn't have actual speech as a stimulus. They had a sweep tones going brrrr, brrrr, and then when you wanted to have a speech-like stimulus, you had tones coming out like this to imitate the stops and starts of speech. Weird. Anyway, it showed you that, oh yeah, you know, this is the stops and starts of speech are above the guy's thresholds, and then they fall below the guy's thresholds here. And that, I believe, was for average inputs. Nonetheless, look at the solid line, manufacturer's first approximation versus readjustment. And again, manufacturer's first approximation, readjustment. It just keeps going on and on. This is with DSL-4. This is NAL-2, or I should say NAL-1. A little bit different target locations, as you can see. The NAL-2, the targets are a little bit less, and they even kind of drift off toward the thresholds in the highs. And that's what NAL's philosophy. Remember, cochlear dead areas. These are the worst hearing loss areas. You've got the most hair cell deaths. So don't, you know, audibility versus effective audibility, all of that stuff from the fitting methods portion of this course. Student 6, you know, just constantly. Now R gain comparisons, DSL, SPLogram comparisons. And the results are consistently like that all the way across. Student 7, it's just always like that. This would be DSL, and this would be DSL here. This would be NAL-1 here. You can just tell just by looking at the targets. I didn't even see the writing here. I was just looking at the targets. Okay? Anyway, student 8, thresholds, student 8, and so on. Student 9, it's constant. Here on the left, what you were getting from what the software said, what you had to do to readjust things. So it's really amazing. I'm showing you old results. You might say, old hearing aids, you say? Well, here's a hearing aid from today, from Resound, fitting according to Resound software on the left. Here's the targets. Here's NAL-1, threshold, loudness, discomfort levels, NAL-1 targets. Look at closely. And here's what the manufacturer did. Look at this. Okay. And again, this gray stuff here, this is just showing you how the mean in long-term average speech spectrum is about 12 dB below the top and 18 dB above. So just you want to focus on having the mean hit the targets. And it's not. It had to be readjusted to hit the targets. So real ear almost always exposes what the manufacturer's software isn't truly doing. And I'm not going to be pointing fingers so much because, as they say, when you point your finger, you've got 3 long ones pointing back at you, you know? So I'm not going to be pointing fingers of blame on the manufacturers. Let's not do that. That's the wrong approach to take. A better approach to take would be, manufacturer software gets us into the ballpark. It gets us to where we want to, toward where we got to go. We as clinicians have to finish the job with Real Ear. This is not taught well enough by places like International Hearing Society. This is not practiced enough among our peers out there in the real world. Many HISs do not use Real Ear. Many audiologists don't use Real Ear. OTC grads should all use Real Ear. Any smart person in this field will use Real Ear, because if you don't use Real Ear, it's like a doctor saying, I think you might have cancer, without doing a test to prove you've got cancer or not. They take biopsies. I mean, you have to find out the truth. And that's the funny thing about our field, is you've got a lot of people in these offices going, oh, how does that sound? Oh, how does that sound? Oh, how does that sound? What do you mean, how does that sound? Do Real Ear and make sure it's right. Stressing the fact that when you begin with a new client, you may not want to hit target. You may want to be deliberately below target, but your Real Ear can be used to do that. You can make sure that your aided outputs actually are a bit below target, and then save the results and print them. Put them in the guy's file. Write on it, I deliberately underfit until he becomes more used to the hearing aids. When the person comes in a few weeks later, readjust. So that, because now he's becoming a more experienced hearing aid wearer. So, but only when you're using Real Ear can you say that. Can you show what you're actually getting, and then prove it, and then keep that in the file and do Real Ear a later time. We are physiotherapists of the ear. We are the custodians of the cochlea. We are scientists as well as counselors. So that's the issue and the fundamental message of today. It's really to highlight the importance of doing Real Ear per se. We looked at a study by Sanders, Studi, Weber, and Gus Mueller in 2015 and talked about how the manufacturers all vary like crazy in their usage of the same fitting method, namely NAL2. We also looked at how proprietary fitting methods roll off the highs like crazy. We looked at how the manufacturers actually tend to implement fitting methods in a more linear fashion, because they underfit for soft, then they get closer for average, and then they tend to overfit for loud inputs. It's like they don't even, it's weird, okay? And then we looked at a bunch of case studies as to how Real Ear exposed how manufacturer software looks or sees through rose-colored glasses. Anyway, it's been a slice. Next week we'll talk more about some other issues regarding RIC hearing aids, thin tube hearing aids and Real Ear, venting effects, and we'll finish off with a bit of a review. Call this like your second last class. Next week will likely be your last one in terms of a Zoom session. Although I may invite you to have a review session, but that would require that live people attend. And that's kind of hard to do because you're all in different places. Nonetheless, I am at your disposal. Please contact me if you have any questions by my email at OTC, or you can contact me by telephone, 778-433-9707. Any day except Friday. All right. Live long and prosper. Ciao for now. Adios. I'll stop recording and get my ugly mug off of your screen. Cheers.